Welcome to CISO's Insiders podcast, powered by GRC Consulting. In this podcast, we'll be interviewing leading CISOs and security leaders in the industry for light, eye-level conversations. Here, they share advice and tips, talk about their biggest accomplishments and failures, favorite drinks, key influencers, and much more. We encourage you to walk away with at least one insight that will help you better yourself or your business. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more content, please check us out on social media.
Welcome, everybody. Today I'm speaking with Jason Wolpow, and today is going to be a slightly different episode. Jason is not the Chief Information Security Officer, but he's able to provide some clarity around the recruitment of cybersecurity personnel as well as leaders. And Jason, I see that you've been with Lawrence Harvey, which is a recruiting company, for the past, 5 years. You spent some time as a consultant, senior consultant, head of cybersecurity recruitment, before settling in your current role, which is, if I'm not mistaken, divisional manager, head of cybersecurity recruitment. So if you'd like to step in, and also Jason has a podcast where he sits down and talks to CISOs in the industry. So maybe step in, introduce yourself, and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, Ben, thank you very much for this. Really happy to be on here. You put it best. By way of introduction, I lead the security recruitment team in in Lawrence Harvey's New York office. Lawrence Harvey, we're a technology recruitment consultancy, and then I head up the cyber function where we recruit on behalf of all different types of firms, your large Fortune 500s, your small startups, and everything in between across different industries. It's been my core focus networking with the cybersecurity world for the past 5 years at this point. It's really interesting, the lens and perspective that I have on the industry, because I'm always speaking to different people with different backgrounds. So I think this could be a really cool episode for us to dive deeper into it. And as you said, I do also have my own podcast where, quite frankly, it's very similar to the structure that you have in yours. We speak to different security leaders across the industry, discuss trends and all that good stuff. So I think this is a great opportunity for both of us to be exposed to each other's network. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time. And I know it took us a few tries to put this on the calendar, but happy to finally get together. Now, before we get started, I typically ask a couple of icebreaker questions. You probably know. If you're willing to share your marital status and favorite drink, that would be awesome.
Definitely not married. So yeah. And favorite drink would be, I like a good mezcal margarita. I like a good smoky drink. So really anything with mezcal, I've definitely been liking. How about yourself, Ben?
Yeah, I like mezcal because of its smokiness as well, and I also like the single malts. I agree. My favorite one is a smoky one. It's called Lagavulin. So yeah.
Ooh, might have to try it.
Yeah, and also if you try an old fashioned, but the one where they make it fancy with the smoke, like the cocktail, that's also good.
Yeah. Sometimes you go to those places and they have that like glass ring around it, and the smoke's filtering into the drink. It's good fun, absolutely.
Yes, that's my go-to cocktail whenever I do take cocktails. But anyway, yeah, let's get started. Unless otherwise we'll be spending all of our time talking about drinks or steaks. So yeah. And I know you mentioned briefly, and you discussed briefly about your role in the company. Can you tell us a bit more about what it is that you do?
Yeah, so I am essentially the third party between individuals that are looking for new job opportunities within cybersecurity, and companies that are looking to bring people in. So organizations have different challenges and pain points in being able to identify the right talent within their team. And then we go in and leverage our networks and all different events and industry discussion boards and things of that nature to be able to find the right people and bridge the gap. It's really cool and rewarding. One of the best feelings in the world is helping somebody to take that next step in their career, land their dream job, and really move up. So it's fun. It's something I'm passionate about. And then over the last 2 to 3 years, not only have I been recruiting security practitioners and security leaders, but I also manage a team of recruiters within my firm. So my role now is a very unique blend of still recruiting, but also managing, and I love it. So it's good fun, and I'm definitely grateful for where I'm at right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And before we get started and talking about the trends in the industry, are you willing to share? You've been in the industry for a good number of years. Are you willing to share your biggest failure so far, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest failure would be it's a it's a funny story. So obviously, when recruiters message people on LinkedIn, it's always, or a good recruiter is going to very much target their approach. They're going to map out somebody's LinkedIn profile, understand if they're right for the role, make sure that the person that they're reaching out to is extremely relevant for it. And I do that every time I message somebody. If you get a message from me, it's authentic. That being said, on LinkedIn, there is a section called LinkedIn Recruiter. And what that does is, even if you have mapped out people that are all relevant for whatever skill set you're trying to find, you can message everybody at once. And it comes up as individualized messages, right? Um, and LinkedIn Recruiter has this button where it can say hello, first name, and it automates the person's first name. I had once messed up when clicking on that button, and I had sent a message to about 50 security leaders in my network that said, hello, first name. And these are people that I know and I've spoke to in the past. And I was so embarrassed after that went out that it didn't actually say their first name. You should have seen how red my face had turned. So yeah, that definitely wasn't a proud moment, but the learn and the takeaway, be detail oriented, make sure that you're double checking everything before you're messaging people. And now we can
Yeah,
laugh at it.
yeah. I mean, the number of times that I got an email saying hello first name, I can't even begin to try and backtrack and give you an
Yeah.
exact number. But yeah, I've gotten that a bunch of times,
Oh,
and
well,
yeah, I
I
mean,
don't feel as bad then.
no, you shouldn't, and it happens. So yeah, I mean, and what was your biggest accomplishment then?
Biggest accomplishment on the flip side of things, there are a couple of organizations that we work with. There's one consultancy and one security vendor that come to mind, where I had placed pretty much an entire team within this company. So a situation where like I had, placed the head of security engineering, and then that person needed to hire 5 security engineers, one within cloud security, product security, application security, a pen test engineer, and then a SIM engineer. So really encompassing all of cybersecurity, and the opportunity to bring this person into their role, and then just fully build out a team under them. That was super rewarding. And then at the RSA Security Conference in 2022, I actually had met up with that entire team in person. And it was just like one of the most surreal moments of my career, you know? So that ties into everything that I mentioned and how rewarding of a job this is. But it's just always a cool feeling when you can build out an entire team.
Yeah, for sure. And I can only imagine that you actually feel of making an impact, and it's very satisfying. So thanks
Yeah,
for sharing.
exactly that. It's really good. So, yeah, of course.
Okay. Give us like a high level overview of your what's the word I'm looking for? Your notion of what the cybersecurity industry is at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the security industry is one of the most important industries within all of technology, or within any segment of hiring in the world, period. Every company needs to be secure, whether an organization has, whatever an organization's internal data is, it needs to be protected. So the security industry is important. That's number one. We need more and more security practitioners, and we need to lower the barriers of entry into cybersecurity, because it's always going to be an uphill battle, and it's just about making sure that we're equipped in the best way possible. Again, I have a very unique view into the cyber job market, which, let's not beat around the bush. This last year, it's certainly slowed down a little bit. With that being said, right now we are seeing things start to spring up again, which is really positive and optimistic. So yeah, short answer, security, it's important. Despite wider economic trends, it still needs to be here, and we're starting to see the market pick back up a little bit, which is extremely encouraging. Does that help answer what you're looking for? I'm happy to go into more detail on that.
Yeah, I mean, it does, but you did mention 2 points that I wanted to expand on. So the first point you mentioned was the barrier to entry. And, I've had a lot of conversations with, people that want to get into the cybersecurity industry and are not really, they don't really know how, like what would be
Yep.
their first step. And this is actually a conversation that I've had with a lot of CISOs out there.
Yep.
And I think it ties into that, the prerequisites or the requirements that some of the companies out there that are recruiting are asking for, like, a minimum of whatever, like 3-5 years, for just being a SOC analyst or one of the other entry-level positions. So what are your feeling on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are sometimes barriers, and it's unfortunate, but we as an industry need to do our best to break them down. The very first thing that we can do to positively affect this would be simply being more truthful in job descriptions. It's very painful to see a job description say entry level on top, but then you go into the body of the job description and it says 5 to 7 years or whatever that can be. So aligning job descriptions to the actual nature of the role would be super helpful. Aside from that, it's just about encouraging people from all backgrounds to get into security. I think there's a misconception sometimes that people need to come from extremely technical backgrounds. And while, yes, there are many disciplines within security that are extremely technical domains, people from all different backgrounds can get into cybersecurity. Whether you're doing research and development within a firm, whether you are in an operational team, whatever it can be, there are different domains in security that can lend nicely into that. So I think as an industry, we need to make people more aware that you don't have to just come from this extremely hands-on technical background to do it. And of course, education is great, and it's good to go to college, but that's not the be all end all. Some of the best people that I place, they did not go to school for a security degree. So helping to leverage different online programs and training and giving people a chance, right? All of these small little things, if we can form them together, we're just going to help kind of get past some of the misconceptions in the industry. And then slowly over time, I think we should be able to get more and more practitioners that are able to join and hopefully make some progress. Does that help build off of what you were looking for?
Yeah, and I do have one more follow-up question. So what do you see as the most common entry-level position that you're able to recruit for?
Yeah, I think a tier 1 SOC analyst is a great way to get into the industry. I mean, ultimately, there's lots of different ways that you can branch off into following being in a SOC role, whether you wanted to stay within the SOC, move into IR, move into engineering for a SOC. So yeah, I would say that entry-level security analyst role is amazing, but it's not just SOC, right? All disciplines of security. I think governance, risk, and compliance is excellent for individuals that are looking to get into the industry that even if they, again, don't come from such a technical background, just having an understanding of different controls, policies, and regulations and how they tie together in a security environment. That's something that can help a person getting into the industry and getting wide exposure. So I'd say those are two of the domains, but again, there's so many different disciplines within security that if you're listening to this and you're looking for your first job within security, please don't box yourself out. Don't limit yourself because there's so much more.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was able to talk about a lot with both CISOs as well as applicants in the field is the career path. Did
Yep.
you have any thoughts about like what would be the career path of a SOC analyst as opposed to an entry-level position at with GRC or with
Yeah.
SDLC for that matter?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, I mean, people can venture out in whichever ways they think are best for them, but I'd say for a SOC analyst, what you tend to see is somebody that progresses within a SOC, right? So tier 1, 2, and 3 in your standard SOC environment. Maybe moving up to a team lead if management is a career aspiration. A lot of the time, people that come from that SOC background also then might pivot into incident response because those two worlds sit so closely together. And then maybe they just develop to be very senior within the incident response field. A lot of the time also, a lot of people that I speak to that started their career within a SOC have also progressed their career to encompass security automation and orchestration of a SOC environment. This hits pretty close to home because one of the most recent individuals that I placed, this person was in a SOC for 10 years. And then they took a year off. They learned a lot of software development, Python, automation, and they combined those skill sets to focus in a high level SOAR focused role. So we see that blue team world sit pretty close. Cyber intelligence is also another area that sits quite close to the blue team. But in comparison, maybe you mentioned somebody that starts as a GRC analyst. Yeah, like they're going to progress in different ways as well, whether they are going into third party risk or vendor risk or internal risk, whatever it can be, right? It's a vastly different background. But at the end of the day, whether you are in the very technical domain of cyber or one of the less technical domains of cyber, there will still be opportunities to move up, turn into a leader if you want to be one. And again, help defeat the bad guys and the bad girls, which is why we're all here in the first place.
And if you're a newcomer to the industry and you aspire to be a CISO one day, what would when you talk to an applicant and they tell you this, what would be your advice to them? How to start, where to start, and how to carve out your career path?
Speak to CISOs that are out there, understand how they got to where they are, and like ask them, what they did to professionally develop. You want to focus on leadership and all of the soft skills because being a great security practitioner is one thing and it's super important. But to be an effective CISO, you need to be an effective leader, obviously. So understanding your strengths in leadership, and where your areas are to upskill, and then actively implementing measures to upskill and get to where you need to be. Whether that's through education, reading books, again, speaking to people, whatever the means are. But it's just about, understanding the soft skills and the communication and all the things that go outside the day-to-day of a security practitioner would be my advice.
Yeah, and I think your feedback is closely aligned with a lot of the feedback that I got interviewing probably by now 80 CISOs out there, talking about soft skills and management capabilities and educating oneself and also marketing yourself as as a newcomer to the industry. Yeah, and networking is important as well as education. Great. Well, thank you so much for these answers. I think you provide a lot of value for people that are listening in and trying to get a feel on, what to do next or how to get into the industry. Can you tell us a bit about prevalent trends in the industry nowadays, especially if you can compare it to I don't know if you can, but maybe to 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, well, maybe not 10 years ago because I wasn't yet in the industry, but 5 years ago, certainly I can give you a difference in what we're seeing. AI is such a buzzword right now. You go on LinkedIn, if you scroll for 2 minutes, you're going to see people talking about AI. And that's obviously an industry trend. What does it mean? It means that threat actors and the bad guys and the bad girls, as I said, they are going to be leveraging artificial intelligence to enhance their attacker capabilities, and come up with different types of threats than I guess we've seen within the past. And then also on the defensive side or the offensive side within like combating and pen testing and whatnot. But we as an industry need to also leverage AI to be able to combat all these threat actors. So artificial intelligence, obviously that's one industry trend. And then I mean, on the less technical side, if we're talking about like a scope of one's role, another trend that we're seeing quite a bit after COVID, obviously, is an increase in hybrid environments in the way that different offices and companies are set up, which then gives the wider market more visibility to different jobs that maybe they wouldn't have been able to do within the past. So those are two very different trends, but those are two trends that tie into my day-to-day and I come across quite often.
Okay, thank you. And to expand on one of your previous answers, and I know, as we mentioned, you help organizations recruit leaders in the industry as well as CISOs. Let's talk specifically about the CISO. And I know you mentioned that briefly, but in your opinion, what's the most crucial skill that a CISO should have? And what are you personally looking for when you help an organization hire a CISO?
Great question. Most important skill is the ability to get everybody to buy into one collective goal. A lot of the time when I ask an organization about the pain points they had and what led to a CISO's departure, it was that they couldn't get the team together. There were different people that were focusing on different initiatives, and they couldn't see that bigger picture. So the ability to foster a team and really build that up, I think that's super important. What do I look for when I'm recruiting a CISO? It's going to depend on the CISO role. I think there's a misconception sometimes when people aren't in the industry that a CISO role is plug and play, but it's not. There's the type of CISO that's building something from scratch. There's the type of CISO that's maintaining an environment. There's the type of CISO that's revamping a security environment that's in a really bad place. So what I look for is somebody's experience in doing one of those things for whatever aligns with the role that I'm recruiting for. And I also look for them to be able to break things down in a clear and concise manner to me. A lot of the time I'll ask CISOs about the scope of their function. And that means the headcount that report up into them, the different skill sets that are looked after, the different business impacts that can come into place if there's not a well-structured security environment. And when a CISO is able to articulate these things in a clear and concise manner, it's always an extreme green flag. So yeah, again, I know I'm naming quite a few things all at once, but I can dive so much more into it. But that's at a pretty high level. Does that provide what you're looking for?
Yeah, and I have another question coming up, obviously. Who's the, your usual like hiring manager for a CISO? And I know you'd say it varies, by organization and all that, but I'm trying to get like a feel to, are CISOs mostly reported into the IT organization or outside of it? So if you could shed some light on that.
So it's interesting. I'd say the last 10 CISOs that my organization has placed, it's been a 50-50 split of if the CISO sits within the IT organization or if they sit outside of it. In some organizations, not all organizations, but in some organizations, sometimes there could be a conflict of interest if a CISO is reporting into an IT organization, but sometimes it works perfectly. So there are times that, a CISO reports to a CIO. I've seen a CISO report to a CFO. I've seen in some smaller organizations directly to the CEO. So truly, I'm gonna say it varies, but regarding like if a CISO should sit within that IT function, it's just going to vary and depend on if the CIO comes from or the CTO comes from a security background, what their goals are and what the business problems are that are trying to be solved. Does that align with what you see in the industry? I'm actually very curious to understand what some of the other leaders have mentioned when they've been on these episodes.
Well, I was about to say that I'm, somewhat surprised because I was under the impression that a lot of organizations nowadays are moving away from the CISO as part of the IT organization mindset, as opposed to what we had in the industry like 10, 15 years ago. Because the majority of the CISOs that I've interviewed, I think most of them are outside of the IT organization, and a lot of them think that that's the way it should be. But yeah, just curious, maybe we work, maybe do you think that's industry specific what you're seeing, or is it across industry? Like the the IT part, being part of the IT.
No, there are industry ties to it. Like for example, there's a few like large financial services clients that we work with. And within these organizations, it's not necessarily sitting under IT. It's a total separate entity. So yeah, no, I think there is something that's to be said for the industry as well. Another I guess title that you sometimes see a CISO report up into that I should have mentioned. Um, a chief compliance officer or a chief risk officer. That's another area that we've seen in the past. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. And so you also hire obviously not only CISOs. Let's take one step back and look at let's say a director of cybersecurity or a GRC
Yep.
director at an organization. When you
Yep.
hire those for those roles, what would you say you're looking for, and what is different than as opposed to recruiting a CISO?
Yeah, I mean, at the core of it, what we're looking for, it's there's still lots of similarities. Somebody that's able to gain buy-in from a team, somebody that's able to understand the business's challenges and how to tie that into security. Somebody that's a well-rounded practitioner, with a diverse background and path up into security. The difference is going to be scope, right? I think one of the most important things in a CISO seat is that board interaction, the executive buy-in, really being that partner between security and the business. And I mean, in some organizations, you might call that a BISO, but overall, that high level interaction. And while a director of security, of course, there might be times that they need to meet with stakeholders and all these types of contacts as well. I don't think that's necessarily going to be a core component of the role. And when I'm interviewing for them, that's not something that I focus on as much, right? One organization's director, it's going to vary from another one, right? Like the director of a Fortune 500 GRC function is vastly different than a director of GRC in a smaller startup. But fundamentally, somebody that's able to get buy-in from a team, that has maybe started their career in that discipline and moved up and has the bumps and bruises from it. I think those are some of the things that are really helpful and obviously help make a good leader over time.
Mm-hmm. Right. And as a potential career advisor, what would your advice be for someone taking their first steps in the industry? And I know we covered that briefly earlier today. Spoke
Yeah.
about positions such as SOC analyst or GRC, but do
Yep.
you have anything to add there?
Again, don't box yourself out. Like there's so many different paths within security, that um, you want to explore it all, give everything a chance. I think that's so important. Um, Continuous learning, that's something that every hiring manager that I work with looks for in the candidates that they bring into their team. Somebody that wants to ask their teammates about um, different topics within security and just kind of understand and have that mentality of never giving up, right? I think that's really helpful. One thing that I like to advise security practitioners, especially getting into the industry, is the ability to articulate how they would find answers. It's okay if you're interviewing for a role and you don't know the answer to a question that you're being asked. Not everybody's perfect, and that's going to happen. But what's super powerful, is the ability to say, hey, I don't quite know that answer, but to get that answer, I would read this blog, or I would use this tool, or I would do X, Y, and Z. In the ability to get from point A to point B, taking that mindset and applying it to security, I think that's super important. And stay persistent, right? It's going to be tough. Not every day is going to be fun. Security, unfortunately, is an industry where there is a bit of burnout and people have some very high expectations, but stick with it, because it's really rewarding. And again, it's one of the most important things out there, and every company needs it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out if there are any other, tips that would be valuable to our listeners, especially to those who's trying to get a foothold in cybersecurity. Like for example, a lot, a question that I'm getting often from people that they're just trying to get into the industry is, okay, what's going to be my first step? What do I need to do? What certification do I need to obtain? What type of course do I need to enroll to?
Yep.
Where do I meet those professionals? How do I, get my first break, basically? This is like what I'm
Yeah.
hearing a lot.
Of course, of course. That's no, it's a good follow-up question. I'd say the entry level cert that we see, the Security Plus tends to stand out. That's good for broader exposure across all of security. How do you get that first conversation with that first security professional to open doors? Tailored LinkedIn connections would be my best advice. And if there's any listeners that want to dive more into how to be tailored on your LinkedIn content, do reach out to me. But I'd say some high level advice would be targeting, you know, targeting some companies that are in geographic proximity to you. And there's a way that you can search on LinkedIn to understand the companies that have active security teams within proximity to you. Putting together a list of five people at each company, maybe, I don't know, 10 companies is a reasonable number. And not just connecting with them on LinkedIn, but when you go to connect with somebody on LinkedIn, there's like that like send connection request with a message type thing. It gives you 300 characters. Summarize your situation in 300 characters. Hi, I'm an entry-level security practitioner looking to get into the industry. You might be hiring, you might not. But overall, I'm looking to speak with good people, understand their path into this and how I can apply that to my own situation. Again, you're going to need to simplify that into 300 characters. But it's about going on LinkedIn, mapping things out, reaching out to people with tailored outreach, in looking to build genuine connections and relationships off the back of that. While of course doing all the technical studying, getting your security plus and everything else that might be needed. Is that what you're looking for there? I'm happy to go into more detail.
Yeah, I think so. And I just wanted to add that, personally, one of the things that I've understood when, talking to all these CISOs is that a lot of people out there are very happy and willing to help people that
Yeah.
want to get into the industry. So if you're asking for help or for advice and you're not, and you're making it clear that you're not trying to, sell anything, or you're not trying to just be one of those cold, this is not one of those cold approaches. You'd be
Yep.
surprised by the number of people that are actually willing to sit, take some time, take out of their time and, put some slots on the calendar and meet with you and trying to help you as best they can.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's a great thing about the security industry is that people do collectively see that this is a team effort. And yeah, even just comparing it to because again, my company, like I lead the security recruiting team, but I have colleagues that run recruiting teams in other disciplines of technology. And I think one really cool market dynamic of the security industry is that people do come together in a great way compared to other technology sectors. So you are totally right. Like people are more inclined to help than one might expect, and we should definitely leverage that when looking to get a foot in the door for sure.
So Jason, we're coming at the tail end of this episode. What's the best way to connect with you? I mean, you provided a lot of great insights here, and I'm assuming some people would want to reach out.
Yeah, of course. LinkedIn is the answer to that. I am on LinkedIn more than I would like to admit. I've got my LinkedIn notifications on. So whether it's core business hours, whether it's way outside of core business hours, if you send me a message on LinkedIn, I would love to connect. And then from there, I can set up calls with whoever would like to speak or whatever form of communication is best for them.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. If money was never an issue, what would you do different with your life?
Um, Something with baseball. I am a massive baseball fan. Outside of work, it's probably the main thing that I talk about. I am on a mission where I travel to all 30 MLB stadiums across the USA. I've seen 23 of the 30, so we're almost
Wow.
there. Yeah, it's really cool. It gives me a fun excuse to travel. But yeah, if money wasn't a thing, I would probably spend every day going to a new baseball game, and doing meet and greets with players and all that good stuff. So It's important to be passionate about things that aren't just your job, of course. What about you? Let me ask you that.
Well, I would probably, focus on my hobbies and, enjoy life more and, do whatever I like to do, like flying, skiing, all kinds of things.
Nice, nice, very good fun.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, Jason. And do you have any notes to summarize this conversation today?
No, first of all, I'm really grateful that you had me on this. I think again, this is a great opportunity for us to be exposed to each other's networks. I think we touched on some really good topics regarding the different backgrounds of CISOs and getting into the industries and getting into the industry and the importance of security. So we're fully on the same page. This has been good fun, and I'm excited for all the conversation and discourse that builds up off the back of it. Thanks a ton, Ben.
Thank you, Jason, and it was a pleasure meeting with you and talking to you today. Thanks.
Certainly.